And then I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. Even though, just to let people get in. So, Julie, you might know this. I was out for a few days down in Ohio, dinking around. I was doing a bike tour through Wayne National Forest. It's down there near Hocking Hills. And you wouldn't believe the number of Ann Arborites that we ran into down there. But I just saw a name pop up, and it was actually one. So
when you ran into?
Yeah.
I love Hocking Hills.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, it was gorgeous. That was my first time there. It was really, really stunning. I'm looking forward to going back, spending more time. It's great.
I'm gonna have to look this up. Hocking Hills.
Yeah, it's in Southern Ohio. It's remarkable.
Hocking.
There's
Amazing we can find
waterfalls.
anything remarkable in Ohio.
I know.
I'm
Open
totally
mind.
that guy. I love ragging on Ohio. I don't know why, but it's really actually gorgeous. Hocking Hills has features that Michigan does not. So as much as I'll rag on Ohio,
I think it's like foothills to, is it foothills to the
Appalachian
mountain range, Appalachian mountain range, and it's
there's
waterfalls and cliffs and hikes and stunning.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the pictured rocks, and we got
That's true.
We have the lakes.
you can go to the ledges over in Grand Ledge. You ever been over there?
Yeah. I used to live in Lansing area. A lot of friends that went climbing up there.
Yeah. We got stuff, got things, but it doesn't.
I'm not saying we don't have anything. I'm just saying Ohio's got some stuff too. So
All right, we'll give them that.
All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started here. What do you say?
Sure.
Do I have the ability to share my screen? I don't know if you've given it to me yet.
You should already have it. You want to give it a try?
I'm not seeing share my screen. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry.
It's the green button.
It's the
It's
only
right under
thing
your
that's
nose.
green.
It's
I'm looking
right
right
there.
past it. All these great things.
Okay. Congratulations, Henry.
I'm here now. It's all right.
Welcome to the webinar.
Did you record us bashing Ohio?
Oh, I think I did. It's already recording.
Probably cut that in post-production.
Yeah, we love Ohio. Well, that was the whole point, is that we love Ohio.
No offense to any participants who have friends or family in Ohio.
All right. Welcome everyone to Sustainability Forum number 4. We've been doing these monthly, so welcome back. If you've already been to one of these, welcome. If this is your first, we're excited to have you. This is part of a 5-forum series of A2ZERO topics where we're discussing sustainability. So we've had a great run so far. You can find recordings of the past forums that we've done at a2gov.org/sustainability/events. And tonight we are talking about energy efficiency, electrification, and everything fun with energy. So we've got a couple of wonderful panelists here for you tonight. And we're gonna talk about the details. So we've got Julie Roth from Solarize. She works in the Office of Sustainability and Innovations. And we have Henry Love from Elevate Energy. Tonight's forum will also be recorded. So if there are parts of it that you miss, you can find more information through CTN. And again, at a2gov.org/sustainability/events. The way tonight will work is we will go through each of the presenters. The panelists will discuss their topics, and we will do Q&A at the end, but that doesn't mean that you cannot submit Q&A at any time, or at least your Qs. So feel free to use the Q&A function to submit a text question, and you can submit it at any time. If it's pertinent to the presentation, we can answer it as we go. Or if you want to speak, you can raise your hand, and we can, if you feel more comfortable speaking your question, we can do it that way too. Okay, well, enough with the housekeeping. Let's jump into this. We're going to start with Henry. Henry Love is the Director of Midwest Strategy and Business Development at Elevate, which is a nonprofit organization that wants everyone to have access to clean and affordable heat, power, and water in their homes and communities. In this role, he works with partners across the Midwest to develop projects, programs, and initiatives that center equity in the climate conversation. Before joining Elevate Energy, he served as Executive Director of the American Jobs Project, which is a nonprofit he started with current Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm at the Berkeley Energy and Climate Institute. He served as Assistant Director of Michigan Energy Options from 2009 to 2015 and has been an executive level strategy consultant to nonprofit organizations in energy, as well as local economic development and workforce development for disadvantaged communities. He has developed programs for academic institutions such as the University of California, Berkeley, and the University of Michigan. He also serves on the advisory board of Carbon 180, which brings together scientists, policymakers, and businesses to fundamentally rethink carbon. In his spare time, he can be found enjoying the great outdoors, especially in Ohio, playing music, or cooking great food with friends and family. So welcome, Henry.
Thank you, and sorry for giving you such a long bio. They're like standard at Elevate.
There's just so much good
info.
info.
We sent you like 3 sentences. I was like, oh, I overdid it.
No, it's great. You've got a wonderful, wonderful history, and we're really excited to have you because of that. You bring a lot to the table. So,
happy to be here. Great. So, buckle up, everyone. The host is disabled participant screen sharing, so you better fix that.
No.
We're going to
talk
talk
about
about
this all worked out.
Yeah, I'll wait while Zach figures that out, and we're going to talk about our energy system and how we kind of need to think about the big picture to get down to actually electrifying our homes and businesses. So we'll start way out. Let's see. I think I've been given the keys. Here we go. All right. You can see my screen now, right? Excellent. Okay, so this is our electric grid, the North American electric grid. It's actually composed of 3 major grids and then 2 minor ones. We have an Eastern grid, a Western grid, a Texas grid, which many of you probably know about now after it had such huge issues in their ice storms. And then there's a grid in Alaska and one up in Quebec. And they're all interconnected, but they function as their own grids. And they're actively working on ways to make them connect even more. It is actually the largest machine in the world because it's all connected, and it is the largest supply chain in the world. And unlike most supply chains that have warehouses for storage, this one has almost no storage, a very small amount compared to how much energy it moves. So when energy moves, it has to get used. To further complicate things, all of this energy is managed by a series of balancing authorities called ISOs or RTOs, and they cover large swaths of the US. Some cover just a single state, like Florida, Texas, New York, and they all communicate with each other to move that power around to meet demand when it's needed. So they're kind of like the stock exchange for energy. They move it around where it's needed and the prices get set by them. So they tell different power plants to turn on and make sure there's enough power on the grid to feed everybody. The one we exist in is the Midwest Independent System Operator, or MISO. That covers a big swath of the middle of the US. In the close to us, the next biggest one is PJM, which goes all the way out to like Washington, DC. Let's drill even deeper down into Michigan, where we have all of the power managed and regulated by our utilities and our Public Service Commission. There are 8 investor-owned utility companies, 9 rural electric cooperatives, and 41 municipal electric utilities in Michigan. So they, obviously the one in Ann Arbor is DTE. Most of the states covered by consumers, and then there's a whole lot more of them in various areas. So electricity demand changes throughout the day, and it kind of looks different based on the winter and summer months. And the reason why is heating and cooling for the most part. In the winter, we heat in the morning and in the evening to keep ourselves warm, and in the summer, we cool during the hottest part of the day. So the energy to do that is met by a certain amount of baseload energy, which is always being produced by mostly nuclear power plants, coal plants, natural gas plants. Then there's some intermediate sources, which some of those existing power plants just increase their capacity, and others sources of energy sometimes turn on. Renewables come into play, as well as smaller power plants. And then there's peak loads, those peaks where demand spikes, and that's when they turn on more expensive forms of energy generation that like natural gas peaker plants, or sometimes more increasingly now batteries and energy storage to meet that demand or increase the flow of hydro. Some of you may know about on the west coast of Michigan, they have a large pumped hydro storage resource where they pump water uphill during when the energy is cheap, and then when they need the energy, they basically have created their own hydro energy. They let that water flow downhill. Not all energy storage is batteries like we think of it. So as I was talking about the different levels of energy that are produced, sometimes you just have to have a constant amount running. Sometimes you need to increase it based on demand. And then there's peaks where demand spikes. And that typically happens in weather-related events, whether you need extreme heating or extreme cooling to deal with extremely cold weather, extremely hot weather. And those are the times when all the different resources on the grid get tapped into. But there's some natural increases in energy production from things like solar, as you can see here in the middle of the day. It shows a little bump from solar, and then wind energy produces a lot. It's more intermittent, producing energy only when the wind is blowing. Solar's a little bit more predictable. So the good news about renewables, if we care about renewables, and I hope we do, is that the prices for them have been declining quickly. About, I think, 12, 15 years ago, solar energy costs $10 a watt. Now it's down to between $1 and $3 a watt for most people. So the prices come down dramatically. Onshore and offshore wind have dropped quite a bit. And another important thing is that battery storage is coming down in price. So as I said, the grid and your home, for that matter, if you have solar on your home, if you're producing energy, you got to send it out. Somebody's got to use it, or it effectively gets wasted. There's not a lot of ability to store that energy and use it at a later time. The cheaper batteries get, the more we'll have the ability to store that energy and only produce as much as we'll need and use it when we need to use it. So the electric grid, so the price you pay for electricity is determined by several factors. One component of that is the levelized cost of energy, which is how much does it cost to build a power plant, whether that's a huge coal plant, a nuclear plant, or solar panels on your roof. How much money do you have to spend for the amount of installed capacity, and how much money will that system generate over its lifetime to repay the investment you've made? So that's how we determine whether certain types of energy are cost effective. So if it's that's why it typically favors larger systems, massive solar arrays, big wind farms, unfortunately, large nuclear and coal plants. But the bigger you build things, the more the costs come down to help produce more energy and repay that investment and make the investors money, because that's America. So that's how it gets valued. Now, the problem being is that that energy has to have buyers at different times. As I said, those markets, the electricity markets, they determine what price energy is at any given time. So that power plant that's in operation, it needs to be able to sell its energy at a target price to make sure it can make that money back. And if it can't, then it's going to lose money. So they're very careful about how they make those investments and build out that energy capacity. And typically there's a system, a series of private ownership of power plants, but a lot of it's owned by the utilities. So one important thing that you all should know, and tied to today's theme, is that lots of studies have been done on this, and energy efficiency actually has the lowest cost of energy in terms of a resource to meet demand. So if we're thinking about needing to meet future demand as our economy grows and the demand for energy grows, should we build a nuclear power plant, or should we invest in energy efficiency of the existing buildings so that we don't have to build that power plant? And the answer is energy efficiency is a much cheaper way to meet future demand by reducing it, reducing the need for new generation. And so that's many of you may have used a program through DTE or another utility in your life that has been created by the state of Michigan through policy that is meant to invest in the energy efficiency of customers of the electric companies. They would love for the demand to continue to grow and grow and grow, and that's been the model of the utility system for a very long time. But because of this annoying fact for the utilities that energy efficiency is the best investment that they can make in their future needs to grow the capacity, the state created laws to make them invest in it and create those programs. Let's see here. So it often works better if there is a little bit of a stick to force them to do that. So the electric grid, as I was saying, utilities make their money by charging you for energy that they deliver to you. The system's a little strange because as much as they produce their own energy, they're technically not selling you the energy they produce directly. They actually sell all of their money or all of their energy to the grid, in this case, to MISO. So DTE sells its energy to MISO when it's produced, and then they buy that back when the customers are using that energy. Sometimes those things line up and you're probably effectively using the same energy that they're producing, but that's not the way the transaction works for them. So they, as I said, they buy and sell the energy. They sell it to the grid and then they have to buy it back to provide it to you. They're also in charge of maintaining the grid in their territory, which they have to make sure that you always have energy. When you flip the light switch, your lights have to turn on. Reliable energy is their job. And so they have to continually invest in upgrading that infrastructure to make sure that the system does what it's supposed to do. And in America, we have actually a very effective system where most people sometimes take the energy we have for granted because it always turns on. You go to a place like Lagos in West Africa, and you might get 4 hours of reliable energy a day in one of the largest economies of Africa. So we do have a very reliable system that works very well, but it's very, very complicated. And the people who manage it need to make money. So when it comes down to you, you pay for your electricity a certain rate, and that's a combination of how much it costs to sell that energy, build that power plant and sell the energy, and also to maintain the grid and distribution system to get it to your home or business. So if we want a cleaner energy future, with more options for us to participate in the energy system. In the past, it's been us buying energy from the utility. Now we're starting to have more opportunities where we can produce our own energy and sell it to the utility. Or perhaps we can have our own storage system and take our house offline when the cost of energy gets very high to the utility and actually help improve their business and get an incentive for that. Or if we own an electric vehicle, we could plug that in and let them use our electric vehicle's battery to help provide services to the grid and perhaps buy energy from us and sell it to other customers. To do that, we need to change the utilities business model, and they fight it. They have made some moves to allow certain things, but their tendency is to want to own it if they can and really be in control of the market. Because there's some issues that if they have too many customers producing their own energy, the investments that they've been making in their financial model of how they were planning on paying for all their power plants and the infrastructure, it won't work out for them. So it's a significant threat to them. And so they tend to want things to either move very slowly or not at all. So as I mentioned, this is kind of the way the grid used to work, is the utility produces energy and they send it out to you. On the right, you can see smarter grids has the utility as kind of more of like a ringmaster of all the different sorts of energy that are out there. They still need to be in control of sending that energy back and forth across the grid, but they also should be properly valuing it and creating markets for those who produce energy to sell it or use their homes or devices or vehicles in a smart way that actually helps the utility have a more effective and profitable business model. I should share some of that wealth. So this is just a quick overview of an efficient home and the different types of things that would be included, like solar panels, inverter, battery storage, and energy efficient appliances. Before Julie goes into her presentation, I just think it's important to think about what it means to electrify. When we want to electrify our homes, or maybe even decarbonize them by electrifying them and then using clean electricity, we're actually increasing the total amount of electricity that our home uses. So that can have negative impacts on the grid. If too many people do that too fast, the grid wasn't built to handle that. So the utility would need to invest in more energy production or more infrastructure to handle that. And because of that, I think there's a mantra in the energy industry, which is efficiency first. You should think about insulation and air sealing and really having a tight envelope for your building before you think about having solar panels or a air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump or really electrifying your whole home. If you have a really tight building that is well insulated and doesn't have a lot of air infiltration, you can potentially have smaller heating and cooling systems and spend less money to operate them. You won't need as many solar panels to meet the demand that you have. And if you, at the same time, also have smarter appliances that may be able to receive signals from the grid, they can automatically cycle or turn on or automate in ways that can help flatten out that demand that's created. And when the demand gets flattened out, that should help prices flatten out and actually reduce the overall prices on the grid to most people. So that's where I think I'll stop for now, because I think Julie's got a lot to talk about. But if there are any questions, I know I just threw a lot at you. It's a very complicated system that we're all trying to help evolve and make work better for us and give us a little bit more of energy democracy to let us choose how and where we get our energy. But we're fighting against a 100-year-old system with a lot of embedded interests in it, and a lot of controls and protections and regulation, and rightly so, because it makes sure that we always are able to turn the lights on. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Hank. A thunderous round of applause. is almost deafening. Cool. Thanks. We got a couple questions coming in. Let's see. The one that I think could use direct response, though, Hank, was when the base load is greater than the demand. What happens in that case?
Oh, I'm unmuting the wrong things. Let's see here. What happens when the base load is greater than demand? So the base load is can be turned up and down. It just moves very slowly. So typically you'd have base load always lower than demand, and you'd have more flexible resources that can ramp up, providing that kind of interim flexible load. So like if you had too much power on the grid, it would cause all sorts of problems. You might be sending power surges into people's homes. And I am not an electrician, just to make a disclaimer on that. But if you've ever read Gretchen Bache's The Grid, I think she goes into a little bit of an explanation of how too much or too little energy on the grid can cause all sorts of crazy problems. Great book, which will explain in much more cohesive and pleasant way how our grid functions and the history of how it came to be the way it is. But yeah, typically because of all the management, you never find a situation where that happens. It's a lot of people's jobs to make sure that demand and supply are pretty much equal all the time.
Okay, cool. Thanks. We've got a couple other questions. I think that we will hold until the Q&A. So thank you, Hank. And at this point, we will shift over to Julie Roth. So everyone, please welcome Julie Roth. She works with the Office of Sustainability and Innovations, running our wildly successful Solarize Group Buy program. She also is working to develop programs around low to moderate income, or LMI, solar access, and heat pumps and efficiency incentivization. The Solarize program would not be what it is without Julie Roth, which is why it is expanding to other municipalities, and she's working with RMI to disseminate the information so that people can use this across the country. So please welcome the local lead of Solarize here, Julie Roth.
Thank you, Zach. I should take you everywhere I go. Hype it up for me. You have to give me screen sharing.
Oh, heck.
I know, it's always something. All
Sorry
right.
about that.
That's okay.
There you go.
Here we go. And all righty.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of pick up where Hank left off and hopefully not overlap too much, but maybe just a little bit. So Hank talked about the grid. He zoomed out and talked about kind of the big picture of things. I'm going to zoom in more and talk about the problem at a more local level, and especially your home. So we know that residential buildings account for about 20% of our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. And we know what to do about it. It's not that we don't understand how to solve the problem. It's just a matter of doing it. It's not so easy, but it is doable. And the solution is renewable energy, electrification, and efficiency, just like Hank said. So there's three ways to get to renewable energy, right? I mean, in big ways. One would be to get more renewables on the grid, right? DTE and consumers build utility scale renewables. And this is happening. The grid's been getting cleaner. DTE's grid is getting cleaner very slowly. They resist it. But it's slow, it's difficult, and it's absolutely necessary. And we know this. Another way is community solar, right? The community solar is where, let's say you live in a condo association, you could do on a small scale, and you have some common land and you want to put a ground mount solar there to power the entire condo complex. You can't do that right now because there is legislation in Michigan that disallows it. You have to be working with your utility has to allow it. So this requires legislation. We may have some movement with DTE now. I don't know, it's public information. The city of Ann Arbor intervened in a rate case with DTE around their voluntary green pricing program, which we said as a city was too expensive for energy that should be cheaper and was not building renewables fast enough. And we won quite a few concessions, one of which is working with DTE to build some community solar in our city. That's a ways out yet. It just happened this like last week. So some movement there. But then there's renewables on site, rooftop solar. This is accessible now. We don't have to wait. There's no legislation needed, and we can do it currently. The other nice thing about renewables on site now is we have this massive built environment, right? We have all these homes, all these businesses, all these corporations with rooftops that are just sitting there. They're providing shelter, but they could also be providing renewable energy. It doesn't take up any more land or any more space if we do it on top of our buildings. Distributed generation, which is what we're talking about, has limitations. We know this. It's not accessible to everybody. Renters, it's difficult because they don't own their roofs. If they want solar, they can't do it. Lower income individuals, generally getting solar on your home or on your roof requires either capital money or credit, decent credit, so you can finance it. Or you have shading, deep shade, lots of trees, or poor roof compatibility. So it's not accessible to everybody, which is why we also need community solar and a clean grid. But there are arguments for distributed generation, for sure. The climate argument is paramount. It's now, we can do it now. And if we do it at scale and we do it all together, it does make a big impact. It addresses the urgency that we have to do something now quickly. There's an efficiency argument. So if you're producing solar energy on your roof, it doesn't have to go anywhere very far to be able to power your home, which is right under it. So you don't get a loss of electricity from traveling long distances for distribution. There's a resiliency argument. So you pair it with battery storage and you have a backup generator. So when the grid goes out now, if you have solar, your solar also goes out, because if you're producing extra energy and it's flowing out into the grid, it can injure a line worker that's up trying to fix it. So there's an automatic safety shut off. But if you have a battery, then you can switch to the battery and it works just like a gas generator would. And also resilience in terms of the grid, like Hank was saying, if we have distributed batteries, distributed storage, whether it's tiny and in your own little home, or whether it's at some point in neighborhoods and microgrids, that can help us build resiliency. And then there's a financial argument. I mean, there aren't that many things that we can do in this space to decarbonize that actually pay you back and then pay you extra, and solar is one of them. So it's kind of a no-brainer if you're able to do it, if you fall in the category that pays itself off in somewhere around 10, 11, 12 years. And then after that, it's just creating income for you because the cost of the system has been paid off and your bills remain low. The cost of solar has dropped precipitously. I need to update this slide a couple more years. It's gone down even further. But at the same time, technology has improved. So the solar panels are getting much more efficient. If you had tried to do this even 10 years ago, you would have needed a lot more solar to produce less energy than they can produce now, and it would have been more expensive. But we're at this very sweet spot where panels are efficient and affordability has really come down. At the same time, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe depending on how you look at it, electricity costs are going in the opposite direction, and they will continue to do so. This is a graph of the electricity costs in the Midwest. And that top green line, that's Michigan. So we have the highest electricity costs in the entire Midwest, and DTE rates just continue to increase. Recently, May of 2019, the MPSC approved almost 9% increase in residential rates. 2 months later, DTE came back and asked for 4.7%. That was approved. And I think they're facing another rate case now. If you have solar and you're financing it, then that flattens that curve, right? Because to the extent that you're paying the same cost every month to offset at least some of it or a lot of your bill, that doesn't keep going up. And then there's the Solarize program, which is what I'm working on right now, which is a neighborhood-based or community-based, really bulk buy solar opportunity, where friends come together, neighbors, colleagues, community members, to learn about solar, and they get the opportunity to purchase solar in bulk, so that installers that participate with the program are offering discounts because of volume. And it's been very successful. We've gotten up over 1.3 megawatts now in our city in the past year and a half, again, distributed on homes and small businesses right here in the Ann Arbor area. That represents, I'm not sure how many homes, maybe we're at 170, 180, something like that. Just to give you a point of reference, prior to Solarize, we were looking at most years somewhere around 30 permits per year pulled. So there is momentum here, which is really exciting because that means it's moving the needle for the community in addition to for the individuals who purchase it. But it's not just all about solar. As we clean up our grid or produce our own energy, we need to talk about electrification. And this is just incredibly important, and we just don't think about it nearly as much as we think about renewable energy. But we think about the fact that power plants, coal plants, gas plants, somewhere else, they are producing greenhouse gases, and we are pulling our electricity from those power plants, and so therefore we are contributing to the problem. We are also burning fossil fuels in our homes. Okay, so our gas furnaces, our gas stoves, our gas water heaters. This isn't true all over the country. Some areas of the country use mostly electric appliances like the Southwest, but up here in the Midwest, we are mostly burning gas in our homes. And that direct building emissions, direct fossil fuel combustion in our buildings accounts for about 20% of Michigan's emissions, mostly from burning gas. We can't get to our climate goals without doing something about this. Gas leaks, as we know. Gas is primarily methane. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, worse than carbon. It leaks when we frack it out of the ground at production, as we process and storage and transmission and distribution, and it leaks in our homes as well, problematically, with pilot lights turning on and off, and et cetera. The utilities have continued to spend money in gas infrastructure. DTE right now has been replacing gas mains under the roads. They're building a new gas plant, I think. And fossil fuel infrastructure has like a 50+ year payback, and we're financing that. And we need to retire gas burning well before 50 years, as we know, like yesterday. You may have seen, I don't know if you saw, just this week, let me go back, the UN is releasing a study, a report, I think, about methane, and how dramatically important it is that we dramatically reduce gas burning and methane in order to meet our climate goals. Apparently, methane has a much shorter life in our atmosphere than carbon does, which means that dramatically reducing it, in addition to being like 8 times more warming potential than carbon. So it means that if we can cut it, it reduces our temperature more quickly, whereas carbons can take a longer time to sort of reduce. So methane is a big deal. Also, burning gas in our buildings has negative indoor air quality impacts as well. Right now, outdoor air quality is regulated, right? So the EPA has standards. If you live in a factory town and the air gets too bad, the EPA at least has regulations for the factory to be able to do something about it. But they don't regulate indoor air quality. No one comes into your house and measures anything, right? Except maybe radon when you're moving. But we spend most of our time inside. And the EPA says that indoor pollutant levels can be anywhere from 2 to 5 and as much as 100 times worse indoors than outdoors. And get this, homes with gas stoves can have somewhere between 50 to 400% higher nitrogen dioxide emissions than homes with electric or induction stoves. That's a lot. That's worse than outdoor air quality. In 2016, the EPA found a causal relationship between exposure to nitrogen dioxide and respiratory health effects like asthma in children. In addition to respiratory effects, IQ and learning deficits, cardiovascular issues, changed lung functions, more allergies. We know that people with lower income and people of color often face higher exposure because they have worse outdoor air quality as well. And we know that residents who have been living in counties with higher levels of long-term nitrogen dioxide exposure were more likely to die of COVID-19. So this is a health impact. We're doing it in our buildings, and it's a massive climate impact as well. So we have to electrify. And I peeked at one of the questions in the Q&A, and we'll definitely get there. It isn't easy, but it's hard to know. It's hard to know what else to do, quite frankly. When we think about the costs of doing things, we rarely take into account the cost of not doing things. And we call that the social cost of carbon. We call it the social cost of methane. There are some serious costs, maybe not right now to our paychecks immediately, but there are some serious costs we are all paying by not addressing climate change. So there are electric alternatives to everything that we're burning gas with. There are air source and ground source heat pumps to heat and cool our homes. There are hot water, heat pump hot water heaters that also use heat pumps, inductive ranges, which are really fun to cook on. There's even heat pump dryers as well, instead of gas dryers. This is a heat pump. There's lots of different types, but essentially the way a heat pump works is that it's similar to what an air conditioner does, right? So if a air conditioner is sitting outside your home, in order to cool your home, what it's doing is it's your air conditioner right now, if you have one, is pulling warm air out of your home and depositing it outdoors. Well, a heat pump does that. It air conditions, it also heats. It just works in reverse. And in the winter, it pulls warm air from the outside, even in very cold climates. They've improved considerably, and they dump the heat into your home, and they can work through your ducted system, or they can work ductless. And they're highly efficient. They will be somewhat more expensive to run in the winter than a gas furnace, because electricity from DTE is right now very expensive compared to gas. They will be less expensive to run than your air conditioner because it's more efficient. So those are heat pumps, and we're having a heat pump workshop. If you don't know this, you can find it on our website, but it is on May 12th, I think. And we're going to have a whole bunch of people who know a lot more than I do about heat pumps coming and talking to us. And then I saved the best for last, which is energy efficiency. Just as Hank said, we're electrifying everything, our cars, our homes, and we know that the least problematic energy for our environment is that's never used, that's just never needed, right? And we have some low hanging fruit in our buildings, and this seems like no-brainers, but it's so easy to do, relatively speaking, and it can make a really big impact. If your house is leaky and most of your 20% or however much of your warm air and cool air is just going outside, then that is just a waste of that electricity or gas. So on the left, that's a blower door test. You can get an energy audit. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. They can look at where your house is leaky and do air sealing, maybe around tops of walls or at attic access. Actually, the Ann Arbor District Library has a thermal camera that if you wait, I don't know, many months, I think, you can check it out and go around your house and determine to some degree where you might be leaking air based on temperature differences. Attic insulation is another kind of no-brainer. All insulation is not the same. I'm learning this. There's insulation and then there's insulation. So you have to do a little research on this. But if you are noticing icicles, if you have cold upstairs rooms, if your insulation is less than 6 inches or you can see your ceiling joists, this is something to look into. LED lights, if you have not done this yet, please just get off the call right now and go do it. Or maybe wait until the webinar is over and then go do it, because this can save you a lot of lighting costs and a lot of electricity. They last forever. They now come in all ranges of colors, so they can be warm like incandescent lights, and we should be just getting rid of all of our incandescent lights at this point. And then the last thing is, you've probably all seen that blue box with Energy Star rating. That's not just a marketing ploy. It's pretty legit in terms of the manufacturers that have gone through the effort to make sure that their appliances are more efficient have earned that Energy Star certification. So if you're going to go buy a new microwave or washing machine or anything, look for one that has earned that Energy Star because it will be more efficient. So this is all very overwhelming, and I get that because I'm, can be a little overwhelmed when I'm talking about it, but it doesn't have to be done all at once. Nobody is looking at anyone at just gut your house and take out a new mortgage and or whatever it is you have to do. You can do that, but the big picture is you really just need to make the right decisions along the way. So if you do your research now and figure out when my hot water heater goes out, what am I going to do? What's available to me? Who's doing the work? So that when it's time to replace it, either you've already done your research, or if it's an emergency situation because it breaks, then you're not just then scrambling around to figure out what to do. As I said, electricity from DTE is more expensive than gas. So that pairing it with efficiency and also pairing it with generation of your own energy helps to offset that. And as I said before, when you consider the social cost of carbon, the equation really changes. I wanted to say one more thing about energy audits. I am actually getting my energy audit. I'm getting one done next week for the first time. I'm very excited. They range in cost depending on what the auditor looks at. And it's a deep look at the performance of your home and where your money is best spent. So they'll come through your home and figure out, well, give you sort of a report. If you do this, this is the payback. If you do that, that's the payback over time. This is how long it'll take you. You may find that, sealing the sort of around the windows in 3 of your rooms is really a big sort of easy thing to do that'll really pay itself off. Whereas maybe replacing all of your windows is not something that is going to be where your money is best spent. You can get energy audits. There's 2 kinds. One is done by folks who do the efficiency work, and they tend to charge less, but they're also selling you the efficiency work, or independent auditors. And some of them will include electrification. If you say, I want to get my house to net zero, they will talk to you about electrification as well, depending on the auditor. So there. So I think I went over my time. I apologize, but I have a lot to say. I could talk longer, but I'll stop. That's all I've got.
You're right on time. That was perfect. Thank you so much. Cool. Yeah, we have a couple of questions that came in, but your presentation was so thorough that you actually answered some of your questions. Some of the questions that popped up. Feel free to continue submitting questions, everyone, and we will have a full-blown Q&A once we wrap up presentations here. But thank you, Julie, so much. Okay, well, here we are rolling into the 7 o'clock hour. Thank you all for sticking with us for tonight. Tonight's forum on energy efficiency and electrification. It is difficult to follow Henry and Julie. These two have really, really great presentations that are super thorough, as I just mentioned, and very technical. I am actually going to shift gears a little bit and talk about maybe less technical things, but more initiatives about building energy efficiency in Ann Arbor, and I will be presenting that for you. So surprise, surprise. I don't often introduce myself, maybe ever. Hi, everyone. My name is Woz Smith. I am a community engagement specialist in the Office of Sustainability, or OSI. And I do a lot of work involving the sustainability of our buildings in Ann Arbor. And so let me get this presentation launched here. And I will, whoops. It just closed on me. Let me get this up again. Julie, come back and talk about Solarize. I messed up my PowerPoint.
Actually, I want to answer one of the questions that was in the
Yes,
chat while you're figuring it out. Somebody asked about, and I think I kind of answered it, but around efficiency and HVAC, I wanted to elaborate on one thing. I think that the commenter mentioned something called right sizing. And it's a really good point. And I'm glad you mentioned the term, because when we think about getting a furnace right now or air conditioner, generally you just call an HVAC person, you get a furnace. Oftentimes it's bigger or more than what you kind of need, because the HVAC installer really doesn't want you to ever, be concerned about it not being enough. If you get an energy audit with somebody who does a green home inspection, a whole home inspection with efficiency or with electrification in mind, they can really help you right size your HVAC, because actually having an HVAC that is too big is really inefficient. It also is really not very comfortable. You've all been in over air conditioned spaces and you know what that feels like. It's not pleasant. And it can really reduce the cost of running it and make it just more comfortable, more of a seamless sort of temperature. So right sizing your HVAC, your electric heat pumps is really crucially important. And hopefully heat pump installers will be able to talk to you about that. Are you ready, Zach, or should I keep talking?
Well, I lost my the PowerPoint notes. So I got the PowerPoint launched again, but it doesn't show me my notes, which is where I read everything from. I don't actually know anything I'm talking about. I need notes, but we can wing it. So let's wing it.
I have faith in you, Zach. You can do it.
Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and get launched here. Thank you everyone for your patience here. Here we go. Well, now I need to share my screen. With how often I do this, you think that I would know how to operate technology. We're only a year into this pandemic. I'm still learning. Okay, there we go. We should see this now. I'm going to assume you can. If you cannot, somebody jump in and stop me. But as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that we are working on in the Office of Sustainability involving the energy efficiency of our buildings, or building energy efficiency. There is a double entendre there if you are picking up on it. I just introduced myself as Zach, but I would be remiss if I did not mention Thea Yeager-Leonard, who's an energy analyst in the OSI, who without whom much of these initiatives would not be where they are today. And in fact, much of the work that we do in the OSI would be directionless without the hard work that Thea does. So I want to mention Thea, and she might be around for questions later. So there she is. Hi, Thea. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to talk about the energy efficiency of buildings in Ann Arbor and some of those initiatives. But first, I want to talk about A2ZERO, which is kind of why we're all here today for this forum. Perhaps you have heard about A2ZERO. It's Ann Arbor's plan for a just transition to community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. It's important to kind of take a step back and acknowledge that, because in developing the A2ZERO plan, as we think about how to reduce our city's overall carbon emissions, these here are the three core values that we structured the entire plan on. They're interwoven into every named action in the plan: equity, sustainability, and transformation. And that's why you heard both Hank and Julie mention things like equity and transformation of markets, and of course, sustainability, because they're critical to what we do. And so to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2030, the OSI took an inventory of our community's total greenhouse gas emissions. And what we found is that we, meaning all of Ann Arbor, are emitting nearly 2.25 million metric tons of carbon into the atmosphere each year. In June of 2020, City Council passed the A2ZERO plan as a directive to get that number to zero in the next, now it's 8 and counting, 8 years and counting. So as you can see from this graph, we have a lot of ground to cover. And we're not quite yet on the path to get us there. And we need a lot of action. So the A2ZERO plan has 7 strategies, over 7 overarching strategies that outline how we can get there. The third of those 7 strategies focuses entirely on building emissions. And that's because buildings alone in Ann Arbor account for over 65% of our total community-wide carbon emissions, which is why we need a community-wide effort to reduce those emissions from the buildings. And so we have a 3-pronged approach, a triad of energy efficiency initiatives to address building emissions, so that ultimately all buildings will have a strategy to reduce carbon emissions, or sometimes that's called decarbonization. Each of these approaches will be unique. The owner-occupied single-family housing will have a program. Rentals will have a program. And then there will also be a policy that focuses entirely on public, commercial, and multifamily residential buildings. Between these 3 initiatives, the city will provide support to help all buildings in Ann Arbor prioritize and realize carbon reductions through energy efficiency. So the first one that I want to talk about is the city, commercial, and multifamily. The goals with all 3 of these first is to make our buildings more affordable to live in and operate. Energy efficiency reduces energy costs and increases energy comfort. So those are the goals of all of our building initiatives. By stimulating energy efficiency, we stimulate local job creation. People invest locally when they are making energy efficiency improvements. And the goal with the 3 of these, the reason there are official initiatives to pursue these carbon reductions in buildings, is to help us track our progress towards A2ZERO goals. Without these initiatives where we are tracking certain metrics, we wouldn't know if we're reducing that 65% number. Okay, so the first one, the city, commercial, and multifamily buildings. This is the one that to date, out of the 3, is the furthest along in the process towards becoming a full-fledged program in the OSI. So this here is sort of an overview of the process that we've gone through. We're still in this process. We're actually about right here. It started with rigorous best practices research, looking at what other cities have done to address building emissions. Thea and I conducted a task force with Ann Arbor building owners and property managers and energy efficiency contractors and an affordable housing representative, etc. DTE was there as well. And we've co-created a policy, and this policy has been drafted. It has gone before public comment. We've done an open house on it. I'm going to touch on the basics tonight, excuse me. But please know that there is the open house that we did on February 4th involving this commercial benchmarking program is available on our website. You can watch this presentation that dives much deeper than I will tonight into the details of what this policy looks like and how we will implement it. But we're in the refinement stage right now, ensuring that the ordinance is up to snuff in all regards and will be successful once it moves towards implementation. So we want to give you an idea of why this policy was prioritized and what it will look like as we move towards implementation. First, I want to start off by stating that we're not reinventing the wheel. This isn't anything brand new and uncharted territory. We found a best practice of benchmarking and transparency amongst 35 other cities over that, and there are more. That number is growing every year. About a quarter of all U.S. commercial building space already actively benchmarks. So we will just be joining those ranks. And it's important and exciting that we're joining that because studies have proven that cities who have benchmarking policies show a 3 to 8% decrease in energy use overall, just for having the policy. And that doesn't include the investment in energy efficiency that happens as a result of these policies. Locally, for Ann Arbor specifically, that 3 to 8% decrease in energy use correlates to over $2.2 million in savings in energy costs, energy and water costs. So when a building owner benchmarks, they use basic building information, the size in square footage, basic use information, etc., combined with their monthly energy and water use to measure their building's performance. This does a number of things. It allows an easy understanding of relative performance. It allows you to gauge where your building, if you're a building owner, for instance, stands among other buildings that are of similar size and similar age, and helps you understand where you might be able to improve. It highlights the opportunities to cut waste and to save energy. And when credible and consistent information on the performance of individual buildings is shared with the public through transparency, it helps renters and tenants and occupants who include that information in their decision making. So very much like the way we use mile per gallon for rating cars, the efficiency of cars, this transparency element would allow us to rate buildings. And that will help a lot with the market transformation that we are aiming to achieve through initiatives like this. Why does benchmarking work? Commercial buildings are unique because they have a wide range of building performance, and that depends on a number of variables. But some of those represent large opportunities for financial and energy investment. And a byproduct of any investment in energy efficiency also improves the occupant experience. If you recall, Julie was talking about a lot of the methane and things that are emitted indoors. That improves the health indoors if we electrify and improve the efficiency. Some of the buildings in Ann Arbor are currently benchmarking, but voluntarily, but we aren't seeing high enough participation to start seeing widespread action and benefits. And so that's why there is a benchmarking policy to begin with. It's because by using a benchmarking and transparency policy, we can scale these benefits to the entire community's population of commercial and multifamily buildings. We can also work to streamline the building owner access to whole building data and improve their experience as well. And I mentioned whole building data because there's some buildings that have multiple units within it. And it can be difficult as a building owner to understand your total energy use if you have multiple tenants using different energies at different rates. Another goal is that we can increase the demand for energy efficient buildings through market transformation to incentivize improvements. Excuse me. And with that introduction to benchmarking and transparency, the benefits of action from a wide population of buildings, I want to give you a quick walkthrough of the process for how benchmarking works. And this is it. Here you go. This is how benchmarking works. So that's my presentation. We're done. No, no, I'm kidding. Don't strain your eyes. This isn't meant for you to digest in one glance, but this is kind of an idea of how it all ties together. Again, the details of this chart that you see here can be found in other presentations that we've given on this. You're also welcome to ask questions, which we will be happy to answer here. But a quick overview, excuse me, is that buildings that are larger than 10,000 square feet will be included in this. That came from a best practices research that we found among policies in other municipalities that that have benchmarking programs. We found that they typically cover at least government buildings, of course, and large commercial properties. And in Ann Arbor, multifamily housing comprises the majority, actually, of our large buildings. So about half of all of the buildings that are larger than 10,000 square feet are multifamily buildings. We have a lot of rentals in Ann Arbor. And so the multifamily sector is recommended to be included in this policy, just so that we can see the full benefits from a policy in Ann Arbor. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Not all multifamily buildings that are larger than 10,000, those that are larger than 20,000 will. All other commercial and industrial uses larger than 10,000 will benchmark. And so we use Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is widely used. About a quarter of all commercial properties use Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's a product of the Department of Energy at the federal level, and it's very easy. It's a streamlined process. It's also free. And so we're looking to employ that in Ann Arbor as well. I should also mention at this point that the 2030 district is a, well, not just local effort, but we do have a 2030 district of Ann Arbor. They're all over the country working to reduce commercial property energy use. Very similarly to the A2ZERO goals. And so Jan Culbertson, I'll give a shout out to her, is doing great work here in Ann Arbor with our local chapter. And they are already doing a lot of really great work for benchmarking. Excuse me. Briefly, not all buildings will have to benchmark. There will be a few exemptions. Those, of course, if it's not occupied, if nobody's in there, yeah, we're not going to require you to benchmark. There are also some instances of, like, say, data centers, like the AT&T building, perhaps, that's maybe it's not in the public's best interest to have their energy use information released. And so they can apply for an exemption from this as well. So I mentioned Energy Star Portfolio Manager earlier. This does track both the energy and water use. And so in this policy, we're aiming to reduce both of those as much as possible through the reporting. For building owners, tenants, and occupants, and the market to rely on information from benchmarking, it needs to be high quality and dependable and accurate information. And so some of what we'll do is also verify the information that people are sharing through benchmarking, through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Excuse me. And let's see here. This is just some more information about Energy Star. And again, that annual savings of 2.4% builds over the first 3 to 4 years typically. And so that's that 3 to 8% efficiency improvement that I was talking about earlier. That is just a result of simply benchmarking. And the reason that works is because if you're paying attention to the energy that you are consuming, you're more likely to make wise investments in energy efficiency. Once you notice where you are wasting energy, it is very easy and attractive to make improvements. There was a study done by the DOE that hosts Energy Star that found that every dollar that's spent on energy efficiency generates $2.23 for the local economy. So it definitely stimulates locally. Local businesses and markets with existing benchmarking and transparency laws reported significant new demand for energy efficiency services and hiring new employees after benchmarking ordinance. So we're looking forward to seeing some of that here as well. And the informed stakeholders applies to all three of the triad that I mentioned earlier. When you have a more efficient building, you see higher occupancy levels. And as a result, also less turnover because it's more desirable. People want to stay or stay in place when they are in an efficient and comfortable building. And therefore, tenants and occupants also value that. They seek that out when they are looking for rentals, commercial rentals, or residential rentals as well. And so then that also inspires the action and incentivizes building owners to improve their buildings. And again, that happens across all three of these. And so now I'm going to talk about the green rental housing program and the single family housing. These two are a little bit more in their infancy than the benchmarking. The benchmarking is well underway. We're looking forward to seeing that policy roll out later this year. But the green rental housing and single family housing are still in development. Just briefly, what we're looking at for single family homes, we're currently calling the Home Energy Audit Disclosure, or HED. And this is one that would, just like for a car, the miles per gallon, it will help potential home buyers understand what they're buying. You wouldn't buy a car today without knowing what its gas mileage got if you were still shopping for a gas powered engine. I still have one of those, so I'm not shaming anybody. But you wouldn't buy a new one anyway without understanding its efficiency. Why would you buy a house without understanding its energy efficiency? It's very, very similar. And so in turn, while it helps home buyers understand what they're getting, it also helps home sellers increase the marketability of their home. This is, again, just like the benchmarking program, is not something that we are inventing here in Ann Arbor. we are developing an initiative based off of best practices of other municipalities where they have already implemented something similar to this. We are just beginning the outreach on this one. So stay tuned as we continue that process and we do more stakeholder engagement on this. Like we did with the benchmarking program, it was very thorough. We expect to do that with both the HEAD and the green rental housing program, which is also very early on in its development. So we are working with tenants and landlords throughout the city, and will be more so in the future, in the coming months, to develop a program that makes sense for Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor already has a very robust rental licensing program, and it's looking like we would tack on to that and piggyback off of the success of that program in terms of what we could possibly do, what we could do with residential rentals. And the benefits are very similar to single family housing, where it helps renters understand what they're getting, and helps landlords keep their buildings. And so that's the triad of these three. Again, more to come on those. We are starting to see some exciting developments in these. I'm outside of these that align with these very well. So there are there's the Viridian project at County Farm Park that is doing a lot with building energy efficiency. And we are starting to see more and more developers contact the city prior to submitting plans for new buildings, new projects, so that they can best understand how it makes sense to fit into the community, and to make sure that they are doing the best things that they can to be wise with the development. And we're excited by that, and we're looking forward to what these three initiatives can do to support the existing housing and building stock while continuing to build a better Ann Arbor in the future. So thank you for your time on that. I think at this point, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to invite our panelists back in, because I'm sure tired of talking, and I'm going to put you all on the spot and ask you all some questions here. Cool. First up, that I'm going to grab here is, why is DTE gas cheaper than electricity?
All right, I can take this one. Technically, you're not comparing apples to apples. It's really, what is that natural gas used for versus the electricity is used for. Natural gas is a more effective heating fuel, so you'll use less natural gas overall to heat your air or water. So heating your home with electricity can actually cost more. That's why you want a very high efficiency system to do that. So it's not necessarily that like a therm of natural gas versus a kilowatt of energy, like one costs more than the other. It's what is that energy doing, and is one more effective than the other, cost effective than the other. Right now, we have super cheap natural gas because we have a very, very strong domestic natural gas production infrastructure that has been developed over the past decade or so, since they found all the shale gas. It's not so cheap in other countries. And we may see in the future a more international natural gas market similar to what we have for oil, which in the long term, that could make natural gas prices in the US rise quite a bit, but they'll normalize across the rest of the world and bring those costs down. So it's one of the things that fights against the economics of electrification, is that sometimes it can just be cheaper to use gas. There's not much we can do about that, because they flooded the market with it and put all sorts of subsidies and things like that to incentivize creating that source of energy for us in the US.
On a similar note, in talking about gas versus electricity, Henry or Julie, can you tell us a little bit more about what that fuel mix looks like when it comes to getting our electricity, where that source generation comes from, in terms of DTE at least?
Julie, do you, I'm not sure if we have the numbers, but so there's two things to think about right now. Is how much renewable energy does DT have right now? They say, I think it's like 15%. That's what they say.
12.5 or something.
Yeah, so they say it's 15%. They have a goal, a stated goal to be, I think, 50% by 2050, or is it 80% by 2050? Now, for them to do that in the past, they're getting to goal looked kind of like a hockey stick. They waited till and put a bunch of renewables on the grid to meet their energy. I think right now they're mandated to have 25%. So that's what they have to do, but they say, and I think my internet connection's unstable, but they say that they will go to 80% by 2050. But they don't have to, so if anything happens that prevents them from doing it, they can walk that back.
I think I'm doing off the top of my head because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we are still at like 60% coal. Is that right? In DTE, it's not good. Yeah, and a lot of natural gas and some nuclear. Natural gas should be renamed to fracked gas. I think it is nothing. It's not natural. I hate that. It's like organic gas or something.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk out there too about nuclear energy and is it clean? Technically, nuclear energy is a zero emissions electricity source. That does not include the massive amounts of concrete and steel and everything else that goes into making a natural gas plant run. So we call it the embodied energy or emissions of a fuel. If your solar panels are shipped from China across the ocean to California, then shipped over to Michigan, there's actually a lot of embodied emissions in that too. So sometimes we need to take a more holistic view of like how we're getting our energy and whether we can buy more locally produced sources from Canada or Buffalo or other places that produce solar panels more closer to us.
Cool. Thanks for the questions that are continuing to come in. Thank you all. Julie, I don't know if you answered this, but do people who opt in to Solarize have the panels on top of their homes?
Yeah. So the way Solarize works, it's because we are not currently allowed to have community solar truly in Michigan, there's no legislation. Feel free to lobby and throw money at somebody. But essentially, DTE will not approve more solar on my home than what I use in a year. So in other words, if I had a big giant roof and I wanted to go in with my neighbor and we could, get solar and offset her bill as well, I'm not allowed to do that because DTE considers me like a mini utility. So each person who's getting solar through Solarize is getting solar either on their own roof, or if they have property that is sunny and a little space, they can get a ground mount, but it's going to be on their property to power their home. You're not allowed to cross property boundaries with your solar generation right now, which is frustrating. I think that got to the gist of the question. If I didn't quite, if there was something more there that you were trying to ask, just re-ask.
Thank you for addressing some of the questions in the chat. For the folks who are watching the recording, I'm going to circle back to a couple of those. So in regards to making a building more airtight, when we're talking about energy efficiency, doesn't that reduce indoor air quality by building up carbon dioxide and other VOCs?
Yes, you do need more air exchange in a building that has a very tight envelope, is the industry term for it. But if you insulate and air seal yourself, you can't turn it into like you're living inside of a cooler where it's like airtight. You have to have air exchanges circulating fresh air into the house as it takes old air out. So it is a necessity. A super tight envelope, you might have added costs to make sure that you're exchanging enough air. You can always open a window. Most of you.
Yeah, and one of the things that weren't mentioned in the question was humidity. And so for that, the person asking that, humidity plays a huge part of that too. And if you're not careful about how you air seal your envelope, you want to be, you might wind up with some water issues or humidity issues, which can cause damage. So I do highly recommend that you read up on it or hire a professional to come do some of your air sealing, even though a lot of what the air sealing can be done pretty easily by yourself. I do encourage you to look into it, definitely.
Yep. Especially in Ann Arbor, where we have wonderful foundation issues and water issues because of our soil and topology. So it can be a problem. You need dehumidifiers, humidifiers, air exchanges. Your house is a system, it needs to breathe.
It's a system. It is indeed. Thanks for saying that. I am really excited by how a lot of the developers and contractors and builders that I interact with are becoming increasingly aware of the concept of a building being a system. It is where we humans spend most of our time, and it's something that I want everyone to think more about in terms. I mean, obviously, I like the buildings aspect of things, but if we think more about our buildings as a living system where we are part of its breathing, so to speak, then I think we take better care of our buildings and make smarter investments in our buildings, rather than just connecting a means to an end and checking a box and saying, oh yeah, I did energy efficiency. It's a system. It is indeed.
I'd like to segue on that if I can.
Please.
So I had mentioned earlier that we're having a heat pump workshop coming up on the 12th. And part of this is a difficult conversation. All of this is difficult. This is why we like to do these sorts of webinars and engage with people and talk to people about where they are and hear from you about, the barriers that you're facing, because it's not just the barriers of cost and how difficult it is to make these transitions away from fossil fuels for the homeowners and the residents who want to do it. That's the supply, that's the demand side, right? We want to do it. Then there's the supply side when it comes to our individual homes. Contractors and installers have been doing the same thing for a very long time. They know gas furnaces. They are comfortable with gas furnaces. They know how to service them. They have inventory. They could do it in their sleep. They're easy to sell. And there's not a lot of motivation for installers to help people switch unless the installer is intrinsically motivated to do so. And so, so it's a supply and demand issue locally, right? We're wanting to educate the public and help people make transitions when they're ready and when they want. At the same time, we need the supply side to be ready to deal with that. So that we know that individuals who want to go to an electric heat pump for a furnace instead of their furnace get talked out of it by heat pump installers, which is incredibly frustrating because you can talk to 7 or 8 people before you find somebody who's excited about heat pumps, and it's mostly because they just aren't aware. They don't know the most current updated technology. They're not as comfortable with the systems. They've always sold gas. It's a difficult problem. So at our heat pump workshop, we're going to start, educating the public, but we're also starting at the city to hold up an entire contractor kind of training program and incentivization program. So we're trying to work on both the supply side and the demand side at the same time, because if you don't have demand, then no one's incentivized to create supply. You're not going to get a whole bunch of contractors trying to work on doing this thing when there isn't demand, and vice versa. So it's tricky. It's a tricky problem, but we're, if it was all easy, we would have done a long time ago. So we're going to do what's hard. It's hard and we're going to do it anyway. I don't know what else to do.
Julie,
But, welcome to your feedback. Sorry, Zach, what?
That's okay. Is that heat pump workshop open to the public?
Oh yeah. There's already something like 160 people signed up. Which is phenomenal. I mean, I think the interest in electrification is really building in our community. That's the demand side. We have to be able to show it in order to change the market, right? Because why would the market change if everyone's just business as usual? So it's really exciting, and I'm excited and nervous and all the things, which is basically how I exist these days.
And if anyone watching this wants to join that heat pump workshop, when is it, or where can they find details?
Yep, you can find the details. It's on our events page on our website at a2gov.org/sustainability. There's an events and newsletter thing you can click on, and it's on May 12th, Wednesday night at 7 p.m.
Cool. Thank you. Whoops, too many screens going on here. There was another question, I'd lost it here, for Julie, which is, what was the reason for the legislation banning the community solar?
Yeah, that's the utilities. Yep. Yeah, that's what it is. The utilities don't want it. They, as Hank was saying, they have a structure that is, they own it, and that's the way it's always been. They're resistant to changing their business structure, which I think theoretically could be a really exciting change for them if they were to embrace it and to become grid managers and to really, move into the future, but they just haven't. So they don't want community solar because it cuts into their bottom line. That's about that. Yeah, and I'm really grateful, Hank, to you for sort of really describing how the grid works and how utilities exist with the complexity of the grid. Every time I hear you do that presentation, I understand it a little bit better. And I've heard you do that sort of a number of times now. It takes a while to really wrap your head around it. But the truth is, when we think about our utility, right, we're thinking about DTE in Ann Arbor. And when you think about what that is, sort of, I think that most people think that DTE has power plants, DTE has the lines, and the power plant distributes to our homes, and that's it. But it's so much more complicated than that, as Hank sort of noted, that DTE is selling to the grid, it's buying back from the grid, there are peaker plants, there is base load. And so when we talk about what is a utility, I think it's just more complicated than we normally think of it, right?
So Julie, you mentioned a little bit of the complexity behind getting contractor buy-in when it comes to fuel switching and different appliances. And both you and Henry are working on programs involving that. Are there, when it comes to replacing an appliance like a furnace or an air conditioner, are there any written guides that you can recommend that we as consumers can reference when we're thinking about making that switch?
So there's a couple resources that are out there. I'd love to see one for the Midwest, but California has done a lot to create guides. One that was, I think, we can possibly send some links out after this or something, right? It's called the Pocket Guide to all electric retrofits of single family homes. As much as it says it's a pocket guide, it's like 91 pages long. It will let you know everything you need to know about electrifying your home, but pretty California centric. California has like every climate in the world, all in one state, because it's huge and has mountains and stuff. But I think it would be good to have something that's more Midwest focused, because we have pretty specific challenges here that affect electrification of homes. So it would be more direct resource. Otherwise, people typically talk to their contractors about this. And unfortunately, I think Julie was getting at, the contractor base is not educated on this. And the job of improving homes, as Zach, you were talking about, home systems, but we have so your HVAC technician, your electrician, you're losing me, aren't you? Yeah. Anyway, a long way of saying it's difficult to get good information from your contractors to help you through the process. Please fill in any gaps that I missed by having a poor connection.
Being swallowed by the matrix. No, I think that was good work. Despite the energy or the.
Someone did a question about Energy Star Portfolio Manager.
Yes.
And I wanted to. I'm out.
You know what, Hank, why don't you try turning off your video and then we might be able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, let's see if this works. Okay, Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Anyone can start an account on it and put building information in for their building, or a made up building if they want to. You should probably use a real building. But that information is not shared publicly. That was the question, is could you find all that information in one place? It's actually some programs, Elevate runs the Chicago benchmarking program.
Elevate runs the Chicago benchmarking program. Are you back?
I am. Internet.
Mm-hmm. I'll pick up on that since we're losing Henry a little bit. It depends sort of on the municipality how that transparency element is managed. Generally speaking, most benchmarking programs that use Energy Star Portfolio Manager go hand in hand with a transparency element, because that's where the real bite in the program comes from, is that market transformation and informing the public. But simply reporting to Energy Star Portfolio Manager does not necessarily mean that your information is made immediately public. That is determined on the municipality and how they want to work within their local community for data management. And so where Elevate is running Chicago's benchmarking program and are making that information available, it has created a very useful data set for research, and it lets the public know who the best and the worst performers are. And like I said, that leads to the market transformation. And that is actually one example that Thea and I both looked at when it comes to best practice research for developing the program for here in Ann Arbor. There are a number of other municipalities like Chicago, Seattle, for instance, and Philadelphia. A lot of large municipalities have benchmarking programs with a transparency element tied in, but it looks a little bit different in each municipality. Hi, Hank. Good to see you. Welcome back.
Also, if anyone wants to jump in, verbally with comments or questions, feel free. You can raise your hand and Zach will take you off mute. No pressure.
And we are getting a lot of questions still coming in via text, but yeah, definitely jump in join the conversation if you'd like. I
see a question in right now that says, that was your first question, which I think this is about the cost of electrifying, which is upgrading to 200 amp service, with an electrician prior to doing anything else, and the cost of sort of electrifying everything, which I did answer in text, but I will answer again, which is that you're right. I mean, this is hard. There's multiple places of potential intervention. One of the things that we've been doing at OSI is we have met with and partnered with and have buy-in from the IBEW, which is the union, the Electrical Workers Union. We've met with them. They are establishing a program for training the electricians so that when they are in your home because you need something or you're doing something, they understand and have a big picture of what the goals are, big picture in terms of decarbonization, so that maybe they're coming in to just upgrade your stove or something, and they take a look at your panel and say, well, if you're planning on doing these other things in terms of electrification, I could make this change now, and then I wouldn't have to come back out another time and another time. And so sort of having that big picture so that it's not a continual expense. We are hoping, the federal government has subsidized natural gas, which is why we're in the situation we're in with methane, right? We are hoping that subsidies will be redirected towards both renewables and electrification. I think Missy's put in a request to the Whitmer administration that any subsidies or any, infrastructure money we get from the federal government here in Michigan, that perhaps we could consider putting some of that towards electrification rebates for people in our state. I mean, there's certainly ways that as a country we need to address the expense of this and help incentivize what we want to see happen. So much of that is out of the control of the city, but we are continually trying to influence those actors that do have control over those sorts of expenses and leverage whatever we can in terms of our power as it is to try and reduce costs. And just like in Solarize, where we are reducing costs based on bulk buys, we're as part of our heat pump strategy, we are also going to be, as the contractors get trained up and as we are developing that program, hopefully stand up some incentivization programs, bulk programs in Ann Arbor. We're hoping to have something going in the fall, if not next spring. So it's a work in progress, but you're right. It takes upfront costs. There's so many things that we're doing at the office and so many ways that we're thinking about these issues. It would be very, very nice to be able to, as a city, help folks do this and help them do some sort of like on-bill financing to do it. So you get energy efficiency and you pay for it over time, and your bills are reduced because of the energy efficiency. And we're working through structures and concepts and legal parameters in which the city can help do those things. And so just know that, all of that stuff is works in progress and very exciting and keeping us all working way more than normal business hours. Right, Zach? Right, Hank? Thea?
I just want to briefly touch back on what you mentioned about the IBEW, the local electrical workers union. Local 252 has made a commitment toward supporting initiatives that work towards carbon neutrality. And so I think they deserve praise on that. That's pretty exciting to have them on board with the initiatives that we're working on. So thank you, IBEW 252. Let's see, there was a question here. Hank, I saw you hop on. Did you have something you want to chime in on? No. Preserving energy or internet access, preserving energy bandwidth, internet bandwidth. I'm getting my words all screwed up. Energy, internet, it's all the same thing, right? Julie, so you were talking a little bit about methane during your presentation and how its greenhouse gas potential is much greater than that of carbon dioxide. But considering that carbon dioxide has a longer life than methane, this question is asking, isn't it better to focus on carbon dioxide right now since it will cause harm for a longer amount of time rather than pushing reduction of CO2 in the future?
Yeah, obviously they're both important, but as we are barreling towards 1.5 degrees of global warming, which is that sort of number after which the changes get to be pretty dramatic and irreparable, there's an urgency because we haven't acted nearly like we should have in the past 10, 20, 30, 50 years. So the urgency is met, like the immediate now. We can do more by dramatically reducing methane quickly, while we're also obviously trying to reduce carbon dioxide. I think it elevates methane. It elevates getting off of fracked gas as sort of a very urgent piece of the picture. And look for that UN report, because I'm sure they'll have a whole lot more details from scientists that know a whole lot more of the technical science behind this than I do. But there were articles all over the papers today, yesterday, the last couple of days about the report that's coming out from the UN. So I would encourage people to go look at that and read it, because it's fascinating.
There's a good question here that I'd like to capture live regarding the energy use in Ann Arbor. And so this person's asking what the total energy demand is in Ann Arbor in terms of megawatts, perhaps, and what amount of that is currently provided by renewable energy. How far do we have to go to get to be 100% renewable? And what proportion of that renewable energy can be generated within city limits? Between solar, geothermal, etc. Either Julie or Hank.
Well, Hank, you can also jump in here. What I can speak to is we have sort of a renewable energy strategy that we're it's been a draft. It's like on version 7. It's continually getting updated as we get more information and as things change and so forth. And someday it will be public and publishable, but it's not quite there yet. And I believe, and don't quote me on anything here because I'm doing this kind of from memory, but I believe that we're currently aiming to build about 74 megawatts within our city boundaries of renewable energy. And that's between residential, rooftop, commercial, community solar, along with DTE, municipal buildings, landfill solar, all of that. That will represent around 9%, I think, of our energy use, and the rest needs to be procured from clean sources that we build or cause to be built outside of our physical boundaries. So does that answer that whole bit of question? And Hank, I don't know if you want to, I'm sure you have something to add.
That's just for the city, right? Yeah, so that's right. And as was mentioned earlier, and just shake your head at me if my signal goes away. Any energy from the grid from DTE right now on average is 15%. Nope, I'm gone. So yeah, it's 15%.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, so it's 15% renewable energy right now, the stuff we get from the grid, but the city's trying to build its own renewables as much on site as possible to offset more of their load. Then Julie, how much has been installed through Solarize in just the past year?
Sorry, 1.3 megawatts so far. And so then the goal through Solarize alone is to continually increase that. I can't remember what they've told me the goal is, but it's going to be probably more than a megawatt a year, although that will change, right? Because everything we do is going to change. So Solarize has been remarkable and successful at jumpstarting the market. And we're going to keep doing it as long as it's successful. And at some point, we're going to hit, a saturation rate through that, and we'll be moving to something else. Hopefully by then, maybe we'll have a community solar project or another strategy. We have all kinds of ideas about strategies around solar, about renting your roofs and putting solar up as a city, about, we have all kinds of ideas. So the idea is continually generate ideas about how we get solar onto our built environment here in the city. And sorry about the dog. He was scratching my back because he just had to get on my lap. So
Yeah, yeah. You better be sorry. None of us. No, I'm kidding. It's great to have another panelist. What's your dog presenting on tonight? We have 10 minutes left.
Hank, Henry, did you have something else to add to that? Oh,
I just answered the question. I don't know if we have an in residence access to that information.
I'm just gonna make funny faces.
Hank, were you asking if that information about our strategy is public? Is that what you were asking?
Is not public.
No, not yet.
Yeah. Public.
So I kind of want to circle back to the question about the cost and the expense that's associated with electrification and making efficiency upgrades that sometimes involve expensive appliance, et cetera, that can make it unattainable for a lot of people. And I'm wondering if Julie or Hank, since you're both working on some interesting LMI work, low to moderate income efficiency work, what are some of the programs that OSI is pursuing right now that addresses that? Because that presents also a very pretty blatant equity issue. How can we expect that everybody's going to be able to achieve this if not everybody can afford it in Ann Arbor?
Well, I can tell you about and none of this is, all this is in planning stages, but I can tell you about an example, which is the LMI, low to moderate income solar access. We've been holding a working group with some OSI staff, some solar industry, some financial folks, Michigan Save, some low income renters, et cetera. We've been meeting bi-weekly to develop a strategy. And our strategy actually, I don't know if you know this, Zach, you probably don't because it happened today, but we won a technical assistance grant from the National Community Solar Partnership. So it's not for money, it's for technical assistance to take a look at the plan that we've come up with. And we're going to get, I know, we're very excited. I think I'm not supposed to publicly announce that yet. Don't say anything. Anyway, so the structure is like this. It's kind of, I don't know, I get very excited about it. So we know that solar is not accessible to a whole swath of Ann Arbor, right? Or anywhere, because not everybody has capital or credit to be able to access it, or owns their roof for that matter. So what if we had rooftops of homes that could host solar? They would be host buildings. They could be small businesses or individual residents that could host solar on their roofs, but they weren't purchasing the solar. They were just allowing use of their roof. The benefit to that homeowner would be that they are getting clean energy for their home. They have a carbon footprint reduction in their own building. They get kind of locked in a rate. They wouldn't get the benefit of the significant bill reduction from getting solar, but we would be doing a leasing program where you'd lock in your rate on your solar. So your energy costs wouldn't keep going up with DTE for the duration of the term of the lease. And the delta, the difference between what you're paying for your lease cost, which is that should be about the same as what you usually pay, and the actual savings gets put into a trust for weatherization and efficiency work in lower income households. So that's our like little brainchild. And I'm really excited about it because then it's sort of unlocking the solar potential in Ann Arbor and using the benefit of it to help those whose energy costs right now are eating into their income at a really high level, who can't afford to do the efficiency work that could really make a difference for them, and doing the efficiency work with that solar money, and also potentially solar on low income homes that we could subsidize with a lower PPA rate that would match their bill savings. So basically, again, planning stages, nothing is fully developed. We're going to get some lawyers to take a look at it, see if this structure is a plan that could be implemented. These are the sorts of things that we're thinking through at the office. Does that help?
That's wonderful. And I think that we could take this opportunity to be a call for input. If there are individuals out there who feel like you've got some expertise in this and or some information that could help this be a success, please reach out. Of course, we would love to hear from you. Okay, the questions have been jumping around on me a little bit between the open and the answered, but I found one that was asking about straw bale homes. I'm going to take the liberty to expand that question to any sort of alternative building practices that aren't kind of run of the mill, what we're currently constructing. Hank answered this in text, and he's pretty spot on. There are a lot of different ways that you can construct a building, and sometimes it can be far more efficient than the way we typically do. However, with the industry currently favoring cheap and simple construction, and with a current shortage in that labor industry, it's really hard to find builders and the like who are willing to take that risk and take a leap to do something different. It's profitable right now because it's in high demand, new homes, but it's also hard to find laborers who will do the work. And so to find someone then who is also knowledgeable enough on these alternative construction methods and who's willing to try it out and see how it succeeds is hard to come by. Hank, anything to add to that?
If you can hear me.
Yes.
There's actually a lot of very interesting building methods that are being piloted now with 3D printed homes, mass manufactured homes that are trying to drive down the cost of efficient construction with different building methods that are more effective. And there's lots of innovation in building materials too. That could change the way that we think about housing in the future, but it's nascent, it's coming, it's not here yet. It's going to have all the market challenges that we have with things like straw bale homes or even a well-built log cabin can be pretty efficient too.
And to expand on that even further, thanks, Hank, is that some of these alternative building methods, building codes prefer tried and true methods. And so where it's something that is quote unquote alternative or hasn't been established in the modern construction industry, it's really difficult to find codes that will allow for that or support that kind of construction. And that's another hurdle. That is where I see my job in the Office of Sustainability and as a liaison to the building department is to sort of block for those and advocate for certain codes that will allow for broader imagination when it comes to building standards. Because it's not very broad at the moment. So like Henry says, it's coming, we're working on it. Fingers crossed we get to see it sooner than later. I think we have had a pretty good discussion tonight. You agree, Julie?
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who attended and asked so many great pressing questions and letting us pretend we have all the answers to everything. We don't, but we're working on it.
Well, I think Julie said everything I wanted to say. Thank you all for coming for your wonderful questions. And thank you, Julie and Henry, and especially Thea, for coming to hang out with us tonight and share your information and get this conversation going in our community. We're looking forward to more of it in the future. Everyone have a wonderful evening. It's still daylight. This is the first forum where we have concluded and there's still daylight out there. So it's still warm. Everybody enjoy, get your seeds in the ground because it's growing season, and get out there, even to Ohio. Good night, everyone.
Night.